Well, following Farmers Weekly journalist Annette Scott's continual investigation into the state of our Mycoplasma Bovis eradication program, you can read more at farmersweekly.co.nz, of course, keeping you up to date. An independent review to find the lessons that can be learned now from New Zealand's largest biosecurity response. M. bovis was first detected in New Zealand 10 months later. It was considering the impact of what it was on the farming and the economy. The Ministry for Primary Industries and industry partners for the likes of Beef and Lamb and DairyNZ, Federated Farmers, embarked collectively on what would be a world-first plan to eradicate the cattle disease. We're joined now by M. bovis's program's independent chair, Kelvan Smith. Evening, Kelvan. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and also, of course, taking the time to set about an independent review, I believe, is being welcomed by the industry. Could you please set the scene for us on your involvement with the program and your experience?
Okay, well, I've been involved as the chair of the governance group of the program for roughly 2 years now. So I wasn't there right at the start of the program. So when I talk about the governance group, that's the three funding partners, which is the government. So that's MPI on behalf of the government, DairyNZ, and Beef and Lamb New Zealand. So they are the three funding partners. And about 2 years ago, they decided that they needed some independence on their governance group. So the three chief executives of those organisations, that's Ray Smith from MPI, Tim Mackel, who's the CEO of DairyNZ, and Sam McIver, who's CEO of Beef and Lamb, because obviously they've all got other day jobs and Bovis is not the only thing they deal with. So they asked me to come in and just chair the board that sits over it, just to make sure we had some good governance oversight in the program going forward.
And in the last couple of years, what's been sort of your biggest learnings before we even sort of get into the process of doing a review?
Well, as you say, the independent review is also about learning lessons about how this response was handled, and that's all about looking forward and strengthening the biosecurity system. But obviously there's been a lot of learnings on the way through, and because this had never been done before on this scale, and so there was no manual to say this is how you manage and eradicate M. bovis. So there was a lot of learning as you went through, because there was not too much known about the disease itself, how it's spread, its genetic makeup, all that sort of thing. So a lot has been learned along the way. It's been very science-driven as well. As more has been found out about the disease, that's been applied to the program, and the way the eradication and the locking down of farms and the depopulation and the cleaning has gone on.
There seems to be multiple different silos to what could be the independent review, from a science perspective right through to the human toll on people's welfare as well. Kelvan, would you be able to outline how you would like to see this review play out?
Well, there's a couple of things there. We've had a technical advisory group come in and have a look at the program 2 or 3 times on the way through, but the key to them was the technical nature, so they very much focused on the technical aspects of the review. In the early days, it was really looking at the feasibility of eradication, understanding how the disease spread, and because the technical advisory group was made up of technical disease management experts, and they helped develop a lot of the tools that were used in terms of estimating the disease spread, and the way lockdowns. It was really about tracking down animals that were moving, and so a lot of that was about understanding how the disease might spread. It's a bit like what's happening with COVID and tracing, and there was a big effort went into the tracing, and so the technical advisory group were very good at giving advice around that sort of thing. This review is quite different. We've deliberately excluded the technical aspects of the review and more looking at how the program evolved over time and what lessons we learnt from the way that response was managed, and that can be applied in the future. So it's not looking back and applying blame where things may not have gone as well as they could have been. It's all about saying, look, we tried this is what we did, we can improve that, and we can apply that for the future. And that's what the most important part is.
I think the big question will be, will you be surveying and getting responses from those on the front line that dealt with the response to formulate those lessons?
we definitely will be, because it would be no good if we didn't hear the voice of farmers affected and impacted by this, because we know for the farmers affected, it has been had a dramatic impact for those who lost their herds and lost their livelihoods, and they might have been building up breeding herds over many generations. So the impact has been quite devastating. And also we'll be talking to people who are supporting farmers and also allied industries that were impacted by this. People like local vets, rural support trusts, I know, have had a big role in supporting farmers. We'll be talking to them, and people like livestock firms, transport firms, anyone who had some involvement in it will be invited to take part.
Yeah, well, that was probably the leading question, is that the farmers I've spoken to across multiple different medias I've been involved in, all they always say is, I'm telling my story so that some other farmer doesn't have to go through what I had been through. And I'm sure they would love to know how they can put their hand up and share their advice, their thoughts, their lessons, their experience with the review. Are you able to suggest how people can get in touch?
The review team themselves, they will be coming out and inviting that input.
Right.
Because now that we've set up the review team, they're independent and they've developed a work program, and they're being supported by a secretariat. And so they're developing their work program, but high on their list of things to do is engage with the people who are impacted by this.
And we're talking about the review panel members, Professor Nicola Chabot, Dr. Roger Paskin, and Tony Cleland, who is the chairman of FMG, all as well as, Professor Caroline Saunders as well. Very, very experienced people. How did you pull together the review panel?
Well, the governance group commissioned the review, so that's the three funding partners, the three CEOs I talked about. I'm on the panel as an independent, so not connected to them, and we've got one other independent member at the moment, Stuart Hutchings, who's a disease management expert, and him and I, as the independents, were charged with the secretariat to go out and source suitable applicants. Now, the governance group gave us a broad outline of the type of skills we would be looking for to bring independence and credibility. And one of the big things we looked for was when their report's finally published, and say a farmer who was impacted looked at the report, it had to have credibility, and the people doing the review had to have that credibility. So we came up with quite an extensive list of names and just went through a process till we landed on a group of 4 people who had quite a broad range of experience, and we thought brought expertise and credibility to the review.
Mm. And will the outcome of the review be published and form part of advice for biosecurity responses into the future?
Yes, it will. So the results will be made public, and MPI will be really interested in the outcomes as far as they go in terms of strengthening the system, because they're always interested in improving the system. There's a review of the Biosecurity Act going on at the moment, but everyone wants to know, what do we need to do to improve our situation, improve our readiness for whatever might happen next.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the team of 5 million, including the farming sector, want to be ready for anything that is worse than what we've dealt with in the past, 100%. Whilst I've got you here, Kelvan, can I talk to you about the depopulation of New Zealand's largest feedlot, 5-Star Beef, with 18,000 cattle? What can you tell us about the program that's going on there?
Well, as it's been made public that the feedlot has got infected cattle on it, and at some stage that will have to be depopulated. But just at the moment, because it has a lot of farms supplying it, MPI in the program want to make sure that they know where the source of infection coming into the feedlot is, and then eventually that will be depopulated. Okay, so our chief science advisor at MPI is currently working through some terms of reference to work out what's the best approach to managing 5-star. So there's no depopulation going on at the moment. It's just really in the review, just work out what's the best approach, and that those terms of reference will come back to the Mycoplasma Bovis governance group to sign off on.
And whereabouts are we at the moment in regards to the response, and how you're feeling about the program to date?
Well, I think the program's at a really good stage. There's only 10 active confirmed properties left in the country, and that's down from 28 this time last year. So in total, since the response started, we've had 261 confirmed properties. Now 251 of those have been cleared, so that's leaving the current 10, and all 10 of those are in mid-Canterbury. So putting that aside, we think the response is in a very good place, but it's like COVID. We can't become complacent, and we need farmers in particular to be quite vigilant in terms of recording cattle movements and being quite careful about movements between properties, because that is the main source of transmission to cattle, between cattle and cattle moving. And really that's what the program's been doing in the last 2 years, is tracing cattle movements just to really and lock down farms that the cattle have been moved to, so we can contain and eradicate the disease.
Mm. And your dealings with Osprey and Nate through the review process, will that be interconnected?
Well, the next phase, we're in what we call the delimiting phase, and that's where you're tracing animals, locking down farms, testing and depopulating as necessary. Eventually we'll reach a stage where the last animal's been traced, and we will believe that the infection has been contained, it's not spreading anywhere else. We then go into a long-term surveillance program so that we can say, look, we are free from disease. Now, that could take 6 to 8 years of testing, ongoing testing, and the testing happens in several ways. There is ongoing surveillance of the beef herd at the moment, and all milking herds get tested through what we call the bulk tank milk test. And that's what showed up in the spring that led to us finding Bovis on these properties in mid-Canterbury. And that's what was expected, because coming into the spring, that's the time when cows are stressed and lactating, and they can be susceptible to the disease. And also 2-year-old heifers came into the milking herd for the first time that were cows back in 2018. So we expected some to actually have Bovis that have reappeared in the milking herd. So look, to answer the question, we're in a very positive place, but we still have to make sure that there's no spread from the current infected herds, and the 5-star beef feedlot issue is dealt with.
And a lot of learnings from our TB eradication program that we've learnt in Bovis, and one from Bovis what we've learnt in our COVID response. So you could say as a country we do learn, and we will learn more from the independent review of the Mycoplasma Bovis program. Independent Chair Kelvan Smith joining us there to give us a bit of an update. Of course, thanks to Annette Scott from Farmers Weekly bringing us the coverage, keeping us up to date on where the program is at.